Now, analysts are insinuating that the race for 2027 may have begun in earnest with the latest visit of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar to former President Muhammadu Buhari in his country home in Daura, Katsina State. The visit, which came just a few days after he met the former head of state General Ibrahim Babangida, as well as former head of state General Abdul Salami Abubakar, retired, in separate visits to their residences in Minna, Niger State, has been linked to his 2027 presidential ambition. Now, Atiku has described the visit to President Buhari as a Salah homage to him with no hidden intention. We're now joined by former PDP Presidential Campaign Council spokesman Daniel Bwala to share his perspective on Atiku Abubakar's visits to former Nigerian leaders and claims of political undertones to the visit ahead of the 2027 presidential race. Good afternoon, Daniel. Great to see you. Looks like you're having a fantastic time there in London. Welcome to Newsday.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's hot out here.
Lucky you, we're in the rain in Lagos, but let's get straight into it. Seems like a harmless visit to fellow political allies and maybe former allies and those in the political circles. Why are we drawing the 2027 election into Atiku's visit to the north?
Well, thank you for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers. One thing about politics is that anytime that season comes, you see a lot of activities. Some activities can be given a political meaning to it, and sometimes the visit can be said to be a celebration visit. But I quite agree with what Senator Sani said, that although the visit is deemed as a Salah visit or homage visit, but it has some political undertone, of the 2027 alignment, realignment, and all of that, which is not strange to us in Nigeria. But I think that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is in a well-positioned place as far as the 2027 is concerned, and I think that he is focusing on what he needs to do at the moment, which is to take away this idea of political talk and focus on governance and what he has to do. When the time is right, we will be ready. But definitely, the movement is around political inclination.
So what tangible outcomes does Atiku expect from these meetings in terms of addressing Nigeria's current issues?
I don't know what former vice president expects. I don't speak for him anymore, right? He has his own reason for the visit, and he has people that can speak on his behalf as far as this issue is concerned. My point is that as a northerner, and I agree with the point by Senator Sani, that these meetings has political inclination. We have had and we have been hearing conversation around who is to be projected for 2027. The latest of the one we heard is that there is a plan to project President Jonathan and to be deputized by Kwankwaso. There is also a plan of another northerner from the northeast, and there is also the plan that of the PDP merger. Right, but what fact that we all know is that Atiku Abubakar is going to run. And because he's going to run, any other plan to project another person in the Northwest will work in favor of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Two, if indeed the rumor is true that Jonathan is going to be paired with Kwankwaso, the bigger question the Nigerian people will ask is whether that combination will deliver. Remember, we are going forward, we are not retrogressing. The third and the most important one is that the various visits to a particular city, to a particular person, in a bid to generate the talking point or in a bid to gather the alliance. The question that the voters are going to be asked is not just the person you are going to visit, but whether the record of that person has delivered on good governance that will warrant the Nigerian people to see the endorsement or otherwise of that person as fundamental to the outcome of 2027 presidential election. But I know that when A is calculating, politics is like a game of chess. When A is calculating, B is not sleeping. What President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is doing at the moment, if you have noticed and have seen his trajectory in the past 1 year, is that he's building bridges. He's making effort to reach out to people even on the other side to see if he can bring them together. And let's look at the nation building as a Nigerian project. And so just like in the game of chess, when you think you're taking a particular move, the other person is also thinking of taking a particular move. And that's why somebody like me who is from the north, who also has worked with President Atiku Abubakar in the past, I am in a better position to tell you that looking at the circumstances and looking at what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is doing and is planning, by 2027, there will be nobody that will be strong enough to compete against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It's a fact that I know. He wants to deliver on good governance. He wants to lay the foundation for a good economy for the Nigerian people. He has also begun to implement certain projects in some parts of the country that is generating a good talking point for him. So if A is planning, B is not sleeping. That's the point I want to say.
Right, thanks for that point, Daniel. I'm not sure how long you've been in London for, but here inflation is biting, insecurity is also ravaging across many parts of the country. Electricity is at an all-time high. The exchange rate, though it has stabilized, is in a place we never expected it to be. So when we speak of a 2027 election and President Bola Tinubu being in a perfect position to deliver on good governance and being in a perfect position to lure voters, I'm just curious as to what indices you're using.
First of all, if you're looking at comparative analysis, the issue of recession is a global phenomenon because of so many things. What they call the war between Ukraine and Russia has affected the economy around the world. Even the United Kingdom, where I'm speaking from, they just came out of recession. As strong as the economy of the United Kingdom is concerned, they just came out of recession. And right now, there is a growing discontent against the current government of Rishi Sunak. And so people are even looking to the next election coming up next week.
And that government is said to most likely be on its way out in the next few days. That Rishi Sunak government.
Right. So the idea of the economic problem is global, but the point to be made is, in the midst of the cacophony, what is the government doing? I think that's the most important thing, because 2027 is way ahead. And certain plans that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is putting in place, by that time it will have come to maturation. By that time it will have come to fruition. By that time people would have they will begin to see the realities of those policies. For example, if you look at the coastal project going on, by that time, there would have been massive improvement along that axis. If you look at agriculture and the policy of the president around agriculture, by that time, there would have been food sufficiency in the country. Then you look at diversity, which is the crucial thing in Nigeria today. There are parts of the country that felt they are left out. With what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is doing, by that time, even the minority would have felt a sense of inclusion and inclusivity. So that's why I said that A is planning, B is planning. When that time comes, it will be apparent to everyone that is watching the political terrain who is in a better position to get the will of the Nigerian people for another 4 years.
Well, from what you're saying, that by the time it's time for the 2027 elections, all these milestones might have been achieved. But is it fair to use the first term, from how you speak, you make it sound like it's a practice test ahead of 2027? Should the focus not be where we're seeing all the efforts going into right now for the 4 years, just by the assumption that all he has is this term, and then we see outcomes just as quickly, as opposed to laying the groundwork that you plan to build on, that the administration will plan to build on come 2027? Should we not see all this happen quickly during this term that he's governing as president, and not necessarily making so much input in that regard, hoping for a second term?
No, definitely. Plans, of course, you probably will know how plans work out. There are immediate, there are mid-term, and there are long-term. The reason why I'm talking about certain long-term and then the mid-term plan is that some of these plans will take about a year or two or even more to come to maturation. That's why I'm talking about the midterms. But there are quite a number of things that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration is doing at the moment. If you look at student loan, you look at the increased allocation to the state, if you look at the collaboration between the federal government and the state government, there are various areas of our economy that things have already begun to be seen. So the bigger picture, which is what I know opposition are going to use to campaign at the time, it would have been too late, because what you are intending to campaign for or against would have been in a better position to the advantage of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. That's the point I'm saying. But that is not to suggest that because they are planning against 2027, therefore the president isn't doing anything, is waiting for second term. Most of these things are to happen before voters go to elect against the 2027.
All right, let's revisit this potential ticket that you've put forward, which is that of Goodluck Jonathan and Kwankwaso as a potential ticket for the 2027 election. We all know the history between these two gentlemen. They've had quite a colorful relationship in the past. I'd love to know what it is that, what information do you have that has led you to publicize the information that there's work being done for such an alliance to run for office?
Our ears are on the ground and our eyes are seeing what ordinary people are not seeing. These are two factors. Number three, the character of the person you are hoping to project. Assuming you want to project Goodluck Jonathan because you think when he comes on board, he has just 4 years. Then the fact that you are going to put forward is President Goodluck Jonathan, when he comes out in 2027 in the Niger Delta, is he capable of winning the entire Niger Delta? Because on the other hand, on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's side are also gladiators from that part of the country. Number two, if you are thinking of floating Jonathan and Kwankwaso, the very fact that there is another northerner that is also going to run will neutralize the effect that Kwankwaso will probably bring on the table. Above all, Kwankwaso, I don't see the justification in Kwankwaso coming out to run against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu because they have a lot in common. It will be in the interest of Kwankwaso to work with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu so that after President Bola Ahmed Tinubu finishes the second term, then Kwankwaso will be in a prime position to get not just the support of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, but the support of the entire northern Nigeria. So the equation, whichever way you twist it, works in favor of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu than against him, because all these gladiators that you're mentioning that are likely to be in the front burner when the time comes, either he has a comparative advantage over them or he has an alliance with them that will make it impracticable for them to be able to pull through against him. Above all, there are only two politicians in the country that are heavily strategic, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Atiku. And President Bola Ahmed Tinubu won the election when the odds were against him, both from his own party and from externally. Now, if he could win in the midst of the cacophony, what makes you think now that he's in a prime position to use his goodwill and expand the broad base of collaboration that it will be impracticable for him to get the second term? And like I said, that this conversation has only come to the front burner because it is raised as an issue. But for the president, he's not thinking about that. He's focused on governance. I have not seen him talk about 2027. I have not seen him talking about, even when the Labour Party, they claim to be the Labour Congress, which is of course the offshoot of Labour Party, bringing in certain, strike action as part of politicking and the rest. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has maintained the composure in a way that he refused to be a part of this politicization of governance. Because the minute the president gets distracted by this conversation, that means the president will be distracted from the governance that is presently focused on, and we have enormous tax on the table. So President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is fixated on them. He wants to deliver governance. He wants to build a nation where no man will be oppressed. He wants to build a nation where we will give to our children a flag that is not stained. He wants to build a nation where minorities like Daniel Bola will have equal opportunity in national life. These are the facts that I know will work in favor of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu when the time comes.
It sounds like you're saying that the president is not really focused on 2027 as it's being vocalized right now, compared to other parties. But you also said earlier on that President Tinubu is building bridges, and if one candidate is making moves, they can also be sure that the president is not, is sleeping and is making similar moves. So what similar moves are you alluding to in that regard? Since you're saying he's not really focused on that. Good.
I get it. Now, politics is about collaboration, right? The conversation around people teaming up is so they can unseat him. In other words, we are looking at who will come on board. We are looking at how we can bring our interests in order to unseat him. I say, why you are doing that? The man in question, why he delivers on good governance to the Nigerian people, he is also focused on correcting the wrongs in the society. So, for example, there are parts of this country where they want relevance, they want their voice to be heard, they want their requests to be granted, right? Now, and for some time, they have not had that privilege. When President Bola Ahmed Tinubu extends good governance to that area, he's building bridges. There are individuals politically who are relegated, not because they were not relevant, but because they were not considered as worthy enough. When President Bola Ahmed Tinubu listens to them, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is building bridges. So delivering on good governance is the biggest strategy for expanding your broad base and also for the purposes of attracting people against the 2027. There is no any other thing other than deliver on good governance, because the conversation will be around whether there is a good governance or not. The conversation will be around whether economically we're able to put our people through. The conversation will be around whether the security situation of the country has improved. The communication is going to be about, is Nigeria better today than it was 4 years ago? And so focusing on that, to me, is the biggest strategy for winning the 2027 presidential election. And that is what I say as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu focus on that. But I need you to know that it is not President Bola Ahmed Tinubu alone that will go to the poll. There are people around him who are also concerned, who have common interests, who have common boundary. And they are not in the seat of power like President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So they are going to be involved. So for example, me, I have the privilege of access to the president. I have his attention, and I am committed to supporting his cause. I have been playing that bit, and I'll continue to do, and my doing so will not distract the president from good governance, which is in fact the reason why I am talking, because we have been hearing this conversation that the North is not happy with the president. The North is gathering the cloud. The North is... No. Let that misconception be destroyed here and today. There are a good number of Northerners that are extremely excited with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Boala is one. Senator Sani has also spoken about the collaboration that he thinks will come to North, because the North had 8 years in power. You cannot take the iniquity of President Buhari and visit it on President Tinubu. You have to do introspection. You have to look at the last 8 years. Has the last 8 years delivered good governance to the people? And if it has not, President Tinubu is not the one responsible for it. If President Tinubu, looking at the North, decide to also reach out to some parts of the North that have not been part of the last 8 years, how is that a crime? So these are the key things that the Nigerian people will begin to see. Look at the minorities in the northern Nigeria. I made the case that there has never been a time in the history of Nigeria where the minorities have had inclusion and have had their voice heard than in the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. That is my principal reason for supporting President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. That was my fear for not supporting him in the 2023 presidential election. That singular act of inclusion and inclusivity that he has introduced is part of the building bridges that is expanding the broad base. I can tell you, because I also come from the faith, the Christian faith, that was very, we had this apathy in the last election, right? I know of a number of prominent bishops that supported Peter Obi in the last election. When I say I know, I mean I have had a personal communication with them in which they expressed their disappointment in Peter Obi, and they say they are going to support Tinubu. How about that? So how about looking at the gains he's also making while people are trying to talk about the losses?
Okay, let me step in at that point, especially as you've mentioned the last election. You've also mentioned Peter Obi, who has also been on a charm offensive to the North, if I may call it that. He's also been paying visits to relevant people at strategic times. But, I like to take this conversation back to, economic indices and the people, the voters, the majority of Nigerians who come out to choose who will lead them. As we both have agreed that at the end of the day, it comes down to, you said it's going to come down to good governance. And that means that the people would have benefited from the government and they would have enjoyed the dividends of the work of that government. Now, if we look at the last election, from the picture you painted, you've almost made it seem like it all comes down to the strategic moves of politicians. However, the group called the Obedience in the last election rose up out of frustration for those strategic movements, strategic alliances by politicians, came together as a group and decided to use their voice at the ballots. Now, in all of these politicking, movements that you've done justice to, you've elaborated on, where's the consideration for the fact that, yes, although the intention may be there to move the country forward by 2027, when the second year of the administration, we're yet to see any positive gains? So are you confident that the people are still behind President Tinubu? Are you confident that the same way you feel that people in the North are really very, I believe you said they are very satisfied with him. Do you feel the Nigerian masses follow suit?
Let me tell you, there are three sets of people in Nigeria. There are the political players. This is my party, this is the other party, and they continue to engage along those lines and only see right in their party and don't see on the other. There are two sets of, the second set of people are the middle class, businessmen, workers, people who don't care about political partisanship. They care about the economy and whether the economy is able to advance to give them the hope of a better Nigeria that we all dreamed of. The third one are the masses, who also are there to either be captured or they are there to be convinced by those who participate in politics ahead of 2027. What you see every time in the media is the first set of people, political party and their supporters. So sometimes when a particular political party is so noisy, you tend to think that reflects the hopes, or that reflects the voice of the majority of Nigerians. So take, for example, the emergence of internet. You find that most of the people who support Peter Obi, otherwise called the Obedient, we did a check. They don't live in Nigeria. They live in climes where they have free internet, where the internet broadband service is 24 hours, where they have less involvement and activity, so they have more time to spend on the internet. So when you go to, and lately, mainstream media to a large extent is being influenced by the social media, because the scandal that breaks out in the social media is reported in the mainstream and becomes a part of conversation. So when you get moved by that, you will tend to think that when you hear the noise of certain people that call themselves obedient, it reflects the greater and the bigger society of Nigeria. You are far from the truth.
Mr. Daniel Bwala, are you saying that the woman in the market who is now having to sell her yam in pieces as opposed to a whole yam, are you saying that she's part of this crowd? Because I'm speaking to the people on the ground, the market women, the people who can't afford tomatoes anymore because tomatoes are too expensive. How does that go into this group thinking, this mob mentality you're talking about on social media? I'm talking about people on the ground.
Yeah. No, I compartmentalize the Nigerian society in three, but my emphasis was on the first because they influence media, right? I can beat my chest to tell you that in the last 8 months, there have been more conversation around what a political party and their people say than about the marketplace. Where to say that mainstream media focus in the marketplace to report what happened in the marketplace and generate the conversation around what happened in the marketplace. But with respect to the marketplace, and people like you rightly captioned, the people who sell tomato and people who are in business, it's a fact that even the president acknowledged that the economy at the moment is tough because we are taking tough decisions to re-engineer the economy and put it on the better path. There is an acknowledgement of what the people are going through. It is only when government is in denial that you will say these people are illusionary. Government has acknowledged that. What we are doing is we are convincing the people that this policy may require for people to make certain adjustment, but it's a policy that will work for the good of everybody. Enough of the rent seeking. Most of these multinational companies that you're hearing, they're packing out of Nigeria. I thought the media will do their own fact checking to see that most of these other companies have been benefiting from rent seeking, tax evasion, and because the economy is restructured in a way that people will have to pay tax, people will have to earn on their strain, they are now threatening they want to go. When they go back to their countries, they will still abide by those policies. And you are not going back to your country to find a ground that is waiting for you. You still have to go and compete. But if this is the policy that will finally make the son, let me finish. If this is the policy that will finally make the son of nobody to find good in what he's doing, it is worth the doing. Self-acknowledgement of the situation that the Nigerian people are going through, we are taking a deliberate time to communicate to them that government is putting plans in place for the good of Nigeria. And the third one is that when the time is right, you say it.
Mr. Bwala, we have a minute with you. In the end, we're talking about the everyday people. People are now substituting tomatoes with, I've seen cucumber, people making stew out of cucumber. So at the end of the day, you're talking about this will take some time and adjustment. What is the timeline for this adjustment? A year has been spent, we're in the second year. What's the timeline? Briefly, please, about 30 seconds.
So the president, with respect to agriculture, because this one deals with agriculture, food sufficiency is a national security issue. And the president is looking at the agricultural sector, if need be, including what he needs to do in the cabinet restructuring to bring hands that are capable of delivering on quality of life to the Nigerian people. Now, there are plans in the agriculture. Time will not permit us, otherwise I would have rolled out some of their plans in the area of boosting, agricultural production and all of that. This will take care of the problem of food inflation, which sometimes is even caused by our own making. Because, for example, in the last Salah, the ram that was going for 450,000 went to 800 and something. A week later, it came back. Because there is also the Nigerian factor where we take advantage of hard situation and we join in giving hardship to our Nigerian people. But I want to beg the Nigerian people to be patient with this government. I'm not saying that the agricultural production and food sufficiency will take it. Probably in the next 6 months, we'll be able to see positives. And I will appreciate if you can call me back in 6 months' time and ask me this question. Has there been improvement in the area of agriculture? Okay. I beat my chest. I will tell you that there is progress.
Mr. Daniel Bwala, we have a date in 6 months' time to follow up on this conversation. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been an enlightening conversation.